welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to show you a couple different ways to use striping tape while you're doing your nails. And I'm using two colors here, Onyx from Dipsy Dip, and if you buy me a drink, I'll tell you. The name of that powder cracks me up every time. So I have two tapes here. The one in the clear sleeve is the actual nail art striping tape. The other one was just a roll of washi tape, and I use that so I can get a different thickness with the lines. That's all. So I'm going to go ahead and apply the base and the dip powder as normal. A couple really thin layers of the base coat and then dip. You'll see I only do 2 layers of dip powder here for the swatch, just because I don't want to waste product on a swatch. Oh goodness, I am such a messy dipper. Is anybody else like that? I'm constantly like sweeping away powder that I'm spilling all over the place. Usually I have my cupcake liners, but I didn't for this video, and I clearly should have. So I'm going to go ahead and just let you guys watch me dip and put the base layer on here. Then I'm going to activate and buff like normal, and then we'll get to the tape part. So now that we've had our swatch all activated and buffed, now it's time to wrestle with this striping tape. So I have my washi tape and my actual striping tape here, and it's a little bit hard to get it started. So you'll see me struggle here for a minute. No big deal. I should have used tweezers. It's a little bit easier to pull it up with tweezers, but oh well. So I'm going to grab a little bit of this washi tape to create my first line. And you can use this technique with any tape really, but I just happen to have a roll of washi tape here. So I'm gonna stick her on and then smooth her down here. And then I'll do that with the striping tape as well. And you'll see me here in a minute, I cut off the little tails, but you want to leave enough length there so you can pull it up after you dip on top of it. The second half of this video, I'll show you how to use the tape so that it lays on top of the dip powder, and then you just put top coat over it. But for this part of the video, I'm showing you how to get that negative design underneath the dip powder. So just smooth it down, and then I'll let you watch me finish doing that, and I'll be back when we're ready to dip. So once you've made sure that those little lines are really pressed down there, grab your other color. I've got onyx here. And then we're going to apply the base over the top of the tape. Now, the way that I do it here in this video, I actually wouldn't recommend it, and I'll talk you through it here in a second. But what I do is I apply base coat to the entire nail when I wish I would have just done it over the part where I want the black to be. And you'll see why once I go to file and buff later, that it creates this little line on the top part of that washi tape, and I don't really like it. So I would recommend just applying the base coat right where your design's going to be, but take it or leave it. That's just my 2 cents here. Now you're going to pour over the powder over your base coat. I'm just going to use this extra swatch stick here, but you can use a spoon or a cuticle pusher, whatever you got. Then another reason why I would recommend in the future just using the base coat on where your design is going to be, so you don't have to be careful when you're sprinkling about getting it over the top of that washi tape. If I would have just applied base coat to the bottom of the nail there, it wouldn't have been a problem. Now, you'll see here the powder's not sticking quite so much, and that's because I activated and buffed. And so because the activator's on there, it makes the base coat dry really quickly. So you have to work pretty quick. So I would recommend maybe waiting a little bit longer to do this part, or going ahead and wiping it off and just kind of dealing with it. You see here, I just go over and add a little bit more base coat. That can cause some problems, but you just have to do a little bit extra filing and buffing, which isn't a big deal to me. Then you have to wait for this to dry and buff off the extra. Now you see I didn't wait long enough and my brush kind of moved the powder, but that's okay. Just kind of smush it back down. And then you can sprinkle a little bit more powder on there to absorb the base coat a little bit more. And then when you get ready to pull off the tape, it's important that you remember what order you laid the tape down in so that you can pull it off in reverse. It's just a little bit easier that way instead of trying to lift all the lines up at once. You know, you want to go one line at a time. Once you have all the tape pulled up, you can go through and kind of smush down anything that started to lift. Make sure everything's dry and it's all clean. You can take a toothpick and kind of move some stuff around too if you need to, but I didn't feel like I needed to here. And then we're going to activate. So I got my activator here, and what I do is I kind of dot on the activator over the different spots, like the thicker areas, and then I let that soak in for a minute, and then I swipe it on over the whole thing. So you'll see that here in a second. So I dab it on just the darker color, and I do this with like ombres too, anytime that there's a darker color and a lighter color. That way it makes sure it doesn't bleed across the lines. And you want to be generous here because it's pretty thick. That's my fault, you know, because I didn't lay on a really thin layer, so it's pretty thick. That's okay, just be a little bit more generous with the activator, and then swipe it all on. And then you're going to wait for it to dry. Now you can do a coat of clear if you have it, but it's not necessary. The top coat that I'm going to use, it really does a good job of filling in any imperfections, and it'll do a good job of filling in that dip between the taller black portion and the lighter pink. So once your activator is all dry and I kind of tap on it, it makes that like nail clicky noise, and that's how you know that it's ready. And so here you see that I'm trying to buff away that line that the base coat left above where the washi tape was. So if I was to do this again, I wouldn't apply the base coat to the whole thing. I would just do it to the bottom of the nail. So then you just buff, 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 and you want to make sure that your activator was really dry, because if you try to buff and file too soon, it's just going to tear all of that right off, and you'll have to do your design over again. So be really careful, and you can kind of clean up any of the edges with your file, but don't file too hard, because again, you'll just file off the design you just worked so hard to create. So just be very gentle while you file. Get ready for this, guys. I got a little bit too aggressive and I'm filing a little bit too hard, and watch what happens. This thing is just going to snap in half. I couldn't believe that it did this on this video. Here we go. I was just so like defeated almost, and I didn't even want to redo it. So I held on to the tip and I just kept going. Oh, so funny. Later for the picture, I ended up gluing on this little, the tip of this nail to the stick. So I just glued it back together, but it's like crooked. So if you look closely in the picture at the front of the video, you can see that it's crooked, which is just, oh, so funny. Okay, so you saw that I activated as normal. Then I'm going to take my top coat here. And it's very important when you do your top coat after doing something like this where you've activated a lot, do just a couple really, really quick, thin swipes. Doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be pretty. But what this first layer of your top coat is going to do, it's going to protect your brush from the activator cross-contaminating your liquids a little bit more. So really, really quick, thin layers, and you see it's not even pretty, it's not that shiny, it's kind of rough, but let that dry. Just those quick little swipes are going to allow you to go back in with your top coat and be a little bit more careful and really make it shine and not have to worry about your brush getting stiff because of that activator. All right, so next up, we're just going to do some striping tape on top of the dip powder. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm still using that same pink color that if you buy me a drink, I'll tell you, and I'm gonna use some striping tape here. Bear with me, I gotta wrestle with it and gotta get it pulled up. And then I'm gonna go ahead and dip my swatch as normal. I'm gonna do 2 layers of the dip powder, and then I'm gonna activate and buff so it's ready to go for the tape. And so I'll kind of fast forward and we'll kind of skip right to that part because y'all know how to dip. You don't need to see it. Does anybody else just love the first time you put on the activator? It just looks so beautiful. It like really brings the colors to life and I love it. Especially with glitters. It's my favorite. Watching the transformation is amazing. So I've got my striping tape here, and I would probably recommend to do this with tweezers actually than your fingers, because the more you touch the sticky side of the tape, the less sticky it's going to be. So you want to try to handle that as little as possible. So then you just cut a piece and you lay it down wherever you would like. Make sure you smooth it on. And I would actually probably even, here I am putting it right on top of dip and then activator. But what I would probably recommend is to go ahead and put on your top coat and then put on your striping tape. It'll just create a little bit smoother of a surface for it to stick to. So you can go ahead and put your top coat on, make sure it's dry before doing this, but I didn't. So it's just kind of whatever is easiest for you guys. And you see here that I'm using some pretty big scissors to cut off the tails. But if you're doing this on your natural nails, of course, you'll use some like little tiny manicure scissors, or you want to make sure the tape is cut to size before you put it on. That'll make your life a little bit easier. All right, so we have our tape where we'd like. Now I'm going to go ahead and put on the top coat and make sure, of course, everything's really stuck down. Otherwise, when you put your top coat on, it's going to kind of move it around. So just like normal, a couple really thin swipes just to get some coverage, and then you can go back in with a second layer to make sure it's really shiny and everything looks perfect. Go ahead and let that dry. And then I'm going to go in with a second layer. Now, if you're doing this on your real nails and not a swatch, I would probably go in and cut off the little extra tails with some little cuticle scissors like this, or like manicure scissors like this. And then when you put on your second layer of top coat, really make sure you cap the edges. Otherwise, if that's not like a smooth transition, that tape is going to get caught on things and you might have some chipping and stuff. So really make sure that you get in there really close, cut off those tails, and then make sure you cap those edges with the top coat. So that's it. I hope that you've enjoyed this striping tape tutorial and you are even inspired to do a couple of your own. Thanks guys, and don't forget to like and subscribe and leave me a comment below telling me what you want to try next. Thanks.